Sorry, do not mind me. I'm just trying to freshen up a little bit because I had to talk about the show that I decided to rewatch out of spite. Honestly, because in the world of like really bad dog shit animes, we have like your simple classics that's out there and about, like Skelter Heaven and Mars of Destruction, and obviously the other really terrible shitty shows that we can talk about over and over again. But today I want to talk about a show that is not only under the same studio, Idea Factory, mind you, that gave us these two incredible shows I just talked about just now, but today I want to talk about Generation of Chaos, a show that for many that have always talked about and debate about what could be the worst anime of all time, Generation of Chaos is honestly a show that I'm noticing now not a lot of people talk about nowadays and bring up when it comes to like what you consider the worst anime of all time. And it's no surprise as to why, of course, because now in the modern day age, a lot of people are going to say the likes of Promised Neverland Season 2, Platinum Man, or even other disappointing shows that's currently airing right now. One Punch Man. But point being, Generation of Chaos is a show that at one point did get a lot of discussion back in the early days of anime online discussion, but of course was overshadowed by two really popular, really infamous shows with Mars of Destruction and Skelter Heaven. Both of these shows, again, coming from Idea Factory. So, without further ado, I decided to dive in deep into the cesspool that is Generation of Chaos here. And Generation of Chaos, it's a one episode OVA, but this one episode was 30 minutes of pure torture. And what I mean by that is that it's broken up to like two parts technically. So it's like a too many episodes into one big gigantic episode. And Generation of Chaos is a show that for me is gonna go down as one of the worst animes I've ever seen and I've ever sat through. Cause again, I know I could make a video talk about Mars Destruction and Skelter Heaven, and probably even make a video altogether with these two shows with Generation of Chaos. But honestly, I wanted to shout out this show because this was a show that I've desperately been trying to erase out of my memory. But every so often, whenever someone asks me, "Hey, what is the worst anime of all time?" I always point out to this show with Generation of Chaos. And I guess to kind of break down like why the show is so bad, let's break it down, shall we? So, in the first half of this one episode OVA, this story focuses on a little boy called Chiffon who has the ability to basically train monsters and capture them and raise them to being the next best adventurer, which is clearly being a huge ripoff, a huge influence from Pokemon, to say the least. Like more specifically, like with the first generation of Pokemon, and I swear to God, the character designs in this show, and even up to the second half of this first episode, is reminding me of like the Chrono Trigger video game series or like the Final Fantasy games, but more specifically, like it's trying to rip off Final Fantasy 1 through Final Fantasy 6 and just watering it down to the worst common denominator. There's even moments where like it trying to rip off Dragon Quest to a degree that it is. Again, a lot of moments that this show clearly rips off a lot of really good popular video games during the 90s and early 2000s. But moving on from like what the show's all about, this show is like what would happen if you decide to make every plot twist happen every so often. Because in this first half of the show, there's like three plot twists that occurs that are so random, so out of the blue that you don't really know why this happened in the first place. So like the episode more or less starts with like Chiffon is like in the woods trying to go into his next big adventure, and then he goes into a battle in a tournament with like the Pokemons, the monsters. They don't really discuss it much, but the monster designs are just so fucking cliche, so dog shit that it makes you wonder what was the point of even like making this little segment in the first place. Because immediately after the dude goes into the tournament, which I guess he's trying to collect the gym badges or some shit, he instantly loses because he was too old. Like I'm not even making this shit up. Like he loses because he was too fucking old, and then he wakes up like, oh shit, that was a dream. I thought I lost in that gym for a second, and then it immediately just ignores whatever the fuck just happened and moves on to where now our main character is in this little village he made from a long travel. He puts this weird pet dog thingy that's I don't even know how like what Pokemon to compare it to, but it's like an orange ugly salamander, and he stores it in like this weird small ass house, and he's just trying to find somebody. Who it is, I have no fucking idea. But then we cut into another scene where we see this random fucking dude with knight armor that's standing above this tall ass building, and the first thing he does is just stand there like menacingly, like he's fucking Superman or Batman, and then he just fucking falls down. He falls down. He doesn't react, and then all of a sudden, two random side characters that I've never heard of comes out of nowhere. And he's like, "Oh my god, you killed this guy! You killed him! Like what the fuck?" And it just happens to this weird back and forth moment, and I think like it was trying to like pull off like it was trying to be like funny and humorous, but it fails on all fronts. I don't know. The show is really cattywampus that even the plot, me talking about the plot right now, makes absolutely no sense. But then after that, the orange salamander thing breaks loose, goes on a rampage. It doesn't really explain why. And at first they're gonna kill it, but then Chiffon, the main character, is like, "No, don't kill it. Set it free because it wants to be free." And then they let it free, and then it cuts to another plot twist where it's now fast forward to like a couple years later. It's like, "Oh yeah," and then that's how I met my teammates. Like, where did that plot even occur? So yeah, if you notice already, as I was displaying, just the first half of this show, like the plot is so all over the place. It bounces from one idea to another idea. I mean, hey, that's why the studio was called Idea Factory for a reason. And overall, it just didn't make sense all the way through. Like I was just left super dazed, super confused, and just wondering like, what was the point of watching this? And then we go into the second half, and the second half is where the real generation of chaos occurs, but it's disguised as the generation of chaos prologue. So it's like, okay, what was the point of that first half? How does this tie into the generation of chaos? And it doesn't explain itself at all. The second episode is completely different. It doesn't connect to the first half of the show at all because it just takes place with two random characters that are like half demon, half elf. They look like elves, honestly, but basically to wrap up the second half and speed run this one, it's basically just like two elves living a happy-go-lucky life, and then their life is fucking ruined when the humans attack them because they were demons. And then all of a sudden the main character in that second half of the show decides, I'm going to get my vengeance on these humans once and for all because they burned down my house, they killed my younger sister, even though in that second half the younger sister survived the fire. I don't know how she died, but I guess she was like super weak and immune to fucking carbon dioxide, I guess. But either way, it ends into where it's like, okay, I'm off for revenge. I'm going to beat my enemies for what they've done to me. Why they put a bad name on the demon race, and it's like, okay, so that's it, and legitimately that's really it. Where it's like, okay, that's it. Now we see our main character getting her revenge. Roll credits. Now, I am aware that to wrap this up, there is a second episode or second season of Generation of Chaos that came out after this show has aired. And honestly, I don't know if I want to talk about it or even mention it, but I figured to lay it out there anyway. And I guess the whole point is that they were trying to adapt like a weird niche video game at the time, but I think they failed on all fronts when they made this show. Also, one more thing I forgot to mention is the obvious fact that Generation of Chaos, Skelter Heaven, and Mars of Destruction, all three of these shows have one common thing, and that's the animation. Yeah, Generation of Chaos animation is super, super dog shit. I mean, you have 3D CGI in the mix that is just super bad. That it also makes Skelter Heaven look like a masterpiece at one point. There were moments where a lot of the characters are just staying still in one place, like they're stuck on a goddamn treadmill. There's also moments where like they're reusing shots from previous shots, so it's like they're not really like even trying to like do something different or unique or like trying to make it interesting and worthwhile. Again, it has all the typical tropes of like every bad dog shit anime with the shitty animation that you could ever ask for by not only Generation Chaos, but by the good old folks at Idea Factor, because hey, they're known for coming out with some of the worst dog shit animation out there. I don't know. This is just bad. And I decided, like, you know what? I decided to rewatch a show that was beloved by many. Why not watch a show that was hated by so many back in the day. And again, I think between Mars Destruction and Skelter Heaven, I chose Generation of Chaos because this is a show that honestly should be brought up when it comes to talk about what are the worst animes out there. But yeah, just wanted to more or less talk about this and yap about it because man, this has been one hell of a journey to go back on when we're watching the show. And yeah, that's about it. I'll see you all in the next one. Later.